Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and we're going to have a look at yet another of the beers that arrived in Riku box number 2. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanaxanaho, my Finnish beer mule living in Oulu in the northwest of Finland, and it's thanks to him that you guys get to enjoy a steady stream of Finnish reviews here on the channel. As I've explained in previous videos, it's very difficult to get a hold of Finnish beer outside of Finland, bar a few different breweries, but there's a great quality of craft beer over there these days, and it's a real privilege to be able to review them for you here on the channel. But Riku is a lovely guy, extremely knowledgeable, and he seems to have his own beer mule network in Finland that he uses to get a hold of things, and in turn he supplies me here on the channel. So I sincerely hope that you guys enjoy these Finnish reviews, because it's pretty cool to be able to get a hold of these beers fairly easily. But Riku, massive thank you to you again for making this review and all the other Finnish ones possible. But yeah, for this review then, we are going to return to a brewery that has featured on the channel once before. I was impressed with the last beer that I had from these guys, and I have to say I'm very curious to see how this one turns out, because this is a completely different style and it's at the opposite end of the beer spectrum, if you like. But for this review, we will go to Lappeenranta, which is in South Karelia in the southeast of Finland, and we're going to have a look at my second beer from Panimoyhtiö Tuju, if I've pronounced that right. Probably not, and I do apologise for any bad Finnish pronunciations in this video. But yeah, we're going to go to Panimoyhtiö Tuju, once again, like I said, and we're having a look at the Musta Leski today. So this particular beer comes in at 12% ABV. It's a barrel-aged Imperial Stout, and if you translate the name into English, it means Black Widow. So yeah, this one I think should be a little bit of a monster, in fact. But the last beer we had from these guys was the Pilsnero, and that one was a very kind of yeasty lager beer actually. It was quite like a Czech Pilsner from what I remember. But yeah, as I say, I really enjoyed that. These guys are a very highly regarded brewery in Finland, so it's nice to be able to try something a little bit different from them. So we need to make sure we get another beer from this brewery in Riku box number 3, another different style, and see how we get on with that. But this one is supposed to be very, very good. Riku has picked out some awesome beers for me over the last kind of 2 years or so, so I'm pretty sure this one will be another treat actually. But yeah, let's crack on with the review then and see how we get on. So as always with my reviews, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Panimoyhtiö Tuju before, and hopefully we can add a few more to that video or that list in the near future, I should say. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, province, prefecture, whatever it is you happen to be interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Finnish ones that I've reviewed for you, and that's being added to quite regularly at the moment because we still have quite a few of the Riku beers to work through. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, on to my brewery notes then to tell you a little bit about Panimoyhtiö Tuju then. So Panimoyhtiö Tuju, as we'll call them for simplicity's sake in the rest of the video, Panimoyhtiö Tuju are based in Lappeenranta in South Karelia in the southeast of Finland, as I mentioned earlier. But the company was founded back in 2015 by Tuomas Mäkiniemi, who has a background in restaurants, and Jukka Mononen, who has a background in healthcare. But they were joined a little bit later on by Samu Koskinen, who is also a shareholder in the company. But the brewery is actually very small in capacity, and it operates a British-built 500-litre brew kit, and they only produce around 50,000 litres of beer per year, and it's Tuomas that is the main brewer. Now, as I've explained to you in other Finnish reviews, there's a sort of bandied tax system in Finland where you have to pay, they basically have to pay more tax to produce a higher volume of beer actually. And so many breweries will get to a certain size and then just never expand beyond that. 50,000 I haven't heard of being such a common figure, if you like, but 180,000 litres seems to be a little bit of a kind of borderline. You'll find a lot of breweries that get to that 180,000 litre mark and then just, you know, take a wee while to expand or just don't expand at all. So it's a kind of interesting thing in Finland, but I know they've been relaxing the laws progressively over there over the last little while, which is great to see, of course. But Panimoyhtiö Tuju are very well known for their New England IPAs, some of the best in Finland apparently, but they don't actually make these beers available in cans because they had problems with oxidation and things like that. So these beers, the New England IPAs, are only available in restaurants. But their lower ABV beers can be found in supermarkets across Finland, and they've also begun to export a few of their beers as well as a result of the cooperation that they have with Coolhead Brew, who are an awesome brewery that I do recommend you check out. But they do some really, really good things from what Rico's told me. I was certainly impressed with the Pilsnero that we had from these guys before, but this one is supposed to be an absolute monster of a beer. But they're quite a prolific brewery from what I see. As of May 2021, when I'm reviewing this particular beer for you, they've produced around 195 different kinds of beer, which is a pretty good return when you consider they've been around about 6 years. That's roughly about 30 beers a year, or a new beer every 2 weeks or so. So yeah, that is pretty cool, I have to say. So yeah, that's all I can really tell you about Panimoyhtiö Tuju for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can again check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's crack on then and have a little look at this beer itself. So as we saw in the last one, you get some awesome artwork from Panimoyhtiö Tuju. Looks pretty cool. You can see it's like a little corkscrew type thing, the symbol there. There you can see Panimoyhtiö Tuju there. I think in Finland they just call it the brewery like Tuju. I think that's just how the Finns would refer to it, of course. But there you can see it's got the kind of wicked witch looking over the cauldron with her husband inside. So like I said earlier, Mustaleski apparently means like Black Widow. So yeah, nice little bit of imagery for you there. But I think this is saying that it's approximately 12%, because if it's a barrel aged beer and these guys are a very kind of small brewery, if you like, then maybe they can't sort of guarantee exactly what percentage this one is, but it will be in the region of 12% ABV, of course. But apparently this beer is a blend of two different barrel aged beers, and it didn't say on the website exactly what beers this one was composed of, in fact, but I did see that the price of this beer was €7.50, so that's just shy of £7 sterling, I would think. Yeah, roughly about that, about £7 sterling. For those of you watching in Sweden, that'll be about 75 Swedish kroner, and for those of you over in the States, €7.50 is going to be what, about $8.50, maybe $9, something like that. But yeah, as I've told you before, Finnish beer is pretty expensive because they've got very high wages and things over there. There's a high tax on alcohol, of course, in the Nordic countries generally. So yeah, kind of makes sense actually. But €7.50 for a big 12% barrel aged Imperial Stout. That's nae bad. That's not bad at all. So yeah, just plain black bottle cap on this one. Of course, as I mentioned, 12% barrel aged Imperial Stout, a blend of two different beers, the Mustaleski, Black Widow. Let's crack this guy open and see how we get on. I have to say, just very curious to see what this has in store for us. I didn't realise when I picked this one up until I sat down to do the review that it was actually a barrel aged one. So it'll be nice to see. Maybe we can guess what kind of barrels have been used in this one, because it really doesn't say anything about it. So we just need to be careful with this, because this beer is bottle conditioned, of course, and you saw the head was willing to go quite crazy there, but I think we can put the rest of it in now. There we are. There you go. Is there a lot of sediment at the bottom of this one? No. Surprised at that because of how active the head seemed like it was going to be, but yeah, it looks very nice. It does say a few things in Finnish on the side there, but I think that was just what was on the brewery website's description there. I think that looks kind of the same, but obviously I have no idea about Finnish other than kipis, kiitos and olut and stuff like this. I always make fun of Finnish a little bit. It's actually, I think it's a very nice sounding language, but whoever wrote that and decided to create that language in the way it seems that it's a contest to get as many vowels into a word as you can. You know, some of the Finnish words, you see the length of these things and the number of vowels, it's just crazy. But yeah, Finnish people are awesome. They're really cool. But yeah, as you can see then, we'll get on to actually talking about the beer. But you can see, as you'd expect from this beer, it's poured a lovely dark ebony rosewood colour, which is what you would expect. And it poured with just under a finger of a frothy, I would say, kind of medium sort of tan head on this one. That's fading away to just be a very kind of thin foamy layer just now, but it's going to leave a nice thick ring just around the edge of the glass there. But you can see that head is starting to dissipate quite a bit. But yeah, there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones going up towards the bottom of that head there. But I mean, overall, it does look very, very nice, I have to say. So if we shine the light through this beer is pretty much black as night. At the surface, it does have a little bit of that kind of Pepsi Max, Coca-Cola type edge to it. But yeah, this beer is absolutely ebony rosewood, black as night. So yeah, I have to say, it does look pretty cool actually. So yeah, I like how it goes together. But remember, when it comes to these beers, the colour is dependent on 1, the type of malts that you use, and then 2, the length of your wort boil. Barrel aging, of course, is going to play a role in adjuncts too, but when it comes to Imperial Stouts, you know, these beers are pretty damn dark as it is, so you're not going to get much change from them in that sense, actually, based on adjuncts and barrel aging. But yeah, a big Imperial Stout like this is probably going to undergo a wort boil of somewhere in the region of like 4 to 5 hours. I don't know what the component beers of this one are, of course, but I would assume something like that. It's probably 2 Imperial Stouts, a kind of similar build, if you like, that have been used to make this one. But looks exactly as you'd expect. Nothing more really to say about that. So let's take a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. Very curious about this. Yeah, I think that's a bourbon barrel aged beer. Could be there could be a little bit of a rum barrel aged thing in there, but whatever it is, it's quite a brown sugary note that you get out of this one. There's a wee bit of fruitiness to it as well, but I think bourbon barrel and maybe a rum barrel aged beer blended together in this one. So yeah, food for thought, definitely. But yeah, straight away with this beer, it gives you everything you would expect on the nose from a barrel aged Imperial Stout. It smells like it's going to have a lovely smoothness and kind of oiliness to it, which is always welcome, of course. But yeah, on the woody side of things then, you can smell that lovely oaky smoothness there just forming the backbone of the beer. You get a little bit of vanilla out of that, of course, too, but it's quite a subtle note in there. But yeah, you get a lovely kind of layer. You can smell just a little bit of the kind of brown sugary element in there. And like I say, it's got a little bit of that sweeter kind of bourbon note to it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there is a little bit of a rum element to there as well. Rum, of course, is a little bit more sugar caney, whereas, you know, bourbon, American bourbon, at least compared to Scotch whiskey, it's a little bit less kind of grainy and things like that. So I think this is a bourbon barrel. I think it's a bourbon barrel and a rum barrel aged beer put together, because it's the brown sugars are quite sort of bright, and the vanilla has a fair wee bit of prominence, and that makes me think more rum. That's given the impression of rum, but you can just smell a bit of that kind of bourbon quality to this beer too. So yeah, the barrel aging side of this thing is very, very nice, in fact. So yeah, I think this one could be a little bit of a treat actually. So Riku's picked out another good one, but I'm not surprised at this point in time about that. But yeah, that's the barrel aging side of thing. I don't think there's too much more to say about that. Lovely smooth oaky character, bit of vanilla in there for sure, and then a nice mix of, you know, slightly brighter rummy brown sugars and a bit more of a kind of oily, a little bit more of a sort of oily bourbony type quality to the beer as well. So yeah, it works very, very nicely, I have to say. I really like how that part of the beer goes together. But let's focus on the malty backbone to this one, because there's quite a few interesting things going on there. So for me, this beer has a lovely kind of, it's got a good balance there. You can smell a little bit of an almost oatmeal-y kind of brown bready smoothness to this one forming the backbone, but on top of that you get a kind of powdery chocolate sort of thing in there. You know, like if you smell the inside of like a box of the Nesquik powder, it really reminds me of that. So there's a wee bit of dryness to the chocolate, but it doesn't smell as if it's too high, you know, too high a percentage of cocoa. You know, it's maybe around 50% cocoa or something like that. So yeah, I think that certainly works works very, very well too. So yeah, yeah, definitely a nice layer of just a smooth, almost like powdery chocolate in this one. It's got a wee bit of a kind of toasty element to it as well, which I like. But yeah, it is pretty interesting. But on the malty side again, you've got a little bit of a kind of oily. You do have a nice little bit of a sort of oily, caramelly or kind of. There's a wee bit of a treacly molasses sort of element to this. You do get an element of brown sugar in the very middle of the nose in this beer, but there's a wee bit of a sweeter caramel there perhaps as well. So definitely some brown sugary notes coming out from the malty part of the beer as well. But to me, the base stouts in this beer smell as if they're quite smooth and bready and almost slightly oatmeal-y, you know, a bit chocolatey, and then, as I say, a little bit of sort of treacly molasses sort of thing. So, yeah, it's got a lovely backbone to it, this one for sure, but it comes across as very, very smooth. The malty side of this beer comes across as extremely smooth in my opinion. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, then I think we've covered the malty side of the beer as much as we can, really. But yeah, on the hoppy side of things, I mean, this one is a barrel-aged beer, so quite a bit of the hoppy character and the potency of that will have dropped out a wee bit. But that doesn't stop you getting just a bit of a smooth earthiness out of this one. You can smell a few remnants of a floral aromaticity, and I do get a bit of grassiness out of this beer as well. The grassiness almost still has a wee touch of zest to it, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, the green component to this beer is actually very, very nice. So yeah, smooth, nice smooth earthiness in there. A wee bit of a kind of herbally note also starts to come out later on, and that builds a good bridge with the sort of brown bready, oatmeal-y bready sort of thing that I was picking out of this one, and just a wee bit of floral and a wee bit of, and a good little bit of grassy character as well. So yeah, the aroma of this beer on the green side of things is pretty damn nice as well. But fruity wise, this beer is very interesting. So for me, on the fruity side of things, you can smell a nice little bit of a sharp raisiny quality to the beer. There's definitely a kind of more juicy plummy element in there. You also start to get a wee bit of a kind of chocolate brownie cakey element underneath the fruit in this beer too, but definitely some figgy elements to it and a bit of a kind of juicy blackberry vibe to the aroma as well. But this is just a beautiful beer. It doesn't do anything, you know, madly surprising if you like, but the aroma of this one is very nice, so it's worth taking a bit of time to ponder that over before you actually taste it. As I always say, when it comes to craft beer and whiskies and sakes, there is a good bit of experience to be had from the aroma itself. But yeah, I think it's about time that we taste this beer then, isn't it? So this one is the Mustaleski, a 12% barrel-aged Imperial Stout, the name meaning Black Widow. Apparently a blend of two different barrel-aged Imperial Stouts. So yeah, I think we can crack on with this one then and see how we go. Thank you again to Riku for this one. Hope you guys are enjoying the finished mini-series, but let's go. Slàinte, skål, keepies. Oh yeah, that is pretty damn solid, I have to say. Now I will say straight away, this one is slightly over carbonated. That could be to do with just how long it's kind of sat in the bottle, but you know, when you've got a very small brewery like this, they do use bottle conditioning, and this is one of the things. This one just feels as if it's very slightly over carbonated, in fact, and I can see, looking at the side, there are quite a few bubbles just coming up to join the bottom of the head in this beer. But I guess that's something, if you let this beer sit for a while, you will kind of get over that. But that's, you know, maybe something that's they maybe need to look at that going forward, because I remember that the last beer was kind of getting towards that as well. So maybe these beers are ones, if you get bottles from Tuju, maybe you want to drink them a wee bit, you know, you want to drink them fairly soon after you get them. Otherwise, you're probably going to get this as a result of the bottle conditioning. This is quite a common thing that you get with very, very small breweries, but that doesn't take away from the flavour profile of the beer really. So let's try and examine that a wee bit more, because you can tell straight away this is a big beast of an Imperial Stout. Yeah, that is very, very nice. It's got a lovely aftertaste to it, this beer. And as the aroma kind of hinted, this is just a big, big, smooth Imperial Stout. Absolutely. It's got a lovely slickness to it as well, but we'll come to the mouthfeel later, of course. As it stands, I'm just going to sip this one because, yeah, the carbonation, as I say, is quite active in this one. But it's kind of what you would expect, to be honest with you, but it does have a wee bit more of a roasty, toasty edge to it. So I suspect there's maybe quite a wee bit of special B in this one, or you know, straight up black malt. I suspect that there is a wee bit of that in here. This beer, it feels like it's quite a roast. It feels like it's a Russian Imperial Stout aged on these different barrels. But yeah, this beer has a nice roasty, toasty edge to it as well, which is quite nice. Reminds me a wee bit of the Nerd Brewing beers from Malmö, actually. But yeah, let's try and break this one down then. So straight away with this beer, as I say, you can feel a bit of the roasty, toasty, black malt, special B, whatever it is, just sitting in the backbone of this beer. Absolutely. But yeah, on top of that though, and once your mouth's adjusted to the beer a little bit, you can feel that lovely, smooth, oaky quality just blanketing the middle of your palate in this one. You can feel that lovely, smooth mix of bourbon and I suspect a bit of rum oak coming out of this one. It could also just be two different types of things, but there is something in my head that's saying that it could be like a Scotch whisky barrel as well, actually, because there is a wee bit of a kind of citrusy, grainy type vibe to the barrel aging too. So I'm not 100% sure about the rum statement that I made earlier. I'm hesitant now to sort of nail my colours when it comes to this beer, but whatever it is very, very nice. But yeah, on top of that kind of roasty, toasty, well-fired bread crusty thing that you've got, you definitely get that smooth, oaky element out of the beer. On top of that, on top of the nice smooth oaky layer, you get the kind of layer of brown sugar that you expect. But if you go to the front corners of your palate and then move diagonally back, on that front half of that middle third of your tongue, you'll feel the kind of vanilla elements pushing their way out of the beer a little bit, which I can really appreciate. But sitting on top of that, on top of the woody layer, of course, you've got that layer of the spirit. Of course, you can feel a little bit of that kind of nice, sweet American bourbon in there. I'm pretty sure that one of these is a bourbon, but as I go, the bourbony part sits towards the dead centre of your palate and on the back half of that middle third of your tongue. But as you move further forward into the front half of the middle third of your tongue, that's where it becomes a little bit more difficult to say. It maybe does have a wee bit of a rummy brightness to it, but there's something that's telling me that this could well be one of the more citrusy leaning Scotch whisky things that's been used in this, as it will for the other barrel aging component. So this is a really interesting beer. It's one that's going to make me think a little bit. But yeah, you've got a good combination of different barrel agings in this beer for sure. I'd be very, very curious to know a bit more about this beer, actually. It's just a shame it didn't really say much on the website about it. But yeah, I like that. I do like that for sure. So that's your barrel aging side of the beer. As I say, a bit more of a kind of oily, bourbony type brown sugar on the back half, the front 30 pack. I think as you move further forward, it gives you a wee bit more of a kind of more citrusy, kind of Scotch whisky sort of thing. It just comes across the brown sugary kind of whisky elements out of the beer. It just has a wee bit of that kind of citrusy element to it. So I can certainly appreciate how that goes about its business. Absolutely, I love that. So yeah, the barrel aging component of this beer, very nicely done. But yeah, sitting on top of the barrel aged component in that middle third of your palate, you can feel there is that nice kind of there is a wee touch of that kind of smooth, oatmeally, brown bready sort of thing to this one, which I can really enjoy. But on the as we say, on the sort of brown on top of the bready kind of thing, it's quite you can get that nice kind of dry chocolatey element out of it as well. So yeah. So towards the front, the very front of that middle third of your tongue, there's a nice bit of bread crusty quality, and you get the same on at the back of that middle third of your tongue as well. And in between, you've got this smooth brown bready wholemealy type layer. Then you've got the kind of chocolate. You've got that sort of powdery chocolate sitting there as well. But the chocolate that you get in this beer comes across as quite a bit higher in cocoa percentage than it does in the Aroma. Maybe it's like a 60 or even 70% cocoa that you're getting out of this. But in the very middle of the middle third of your palate, you can feel that nice wee element of treacly molasses note coming out of the beer. As you move slightly out from that, you get a little bit more of a kind of sweeter caramelly element and a wee bit of a toasty brown sugar over towards the edge of your palate. So that's interesting with this one for sure. I can certainly appreciate that with this beer as well. So the middle third of your palate's got a lot of complexity to it. That's the only part we've really covered of this beer so far. But yeah, there's a lot of things going on this one, and it's a beer that really grows on you a wee bit for sure. But yeah, let's move on to the rest of the beer though. On that border region between middle third and back third of your palate, you get a nice bit of a kind of almost chocolate brownie type thing, but it's almost like a quite charred chocolate brownie. But in the back third of your palate, you've got that, you know, well-fired bread crusty thing forming the backbone of the beer. A bit of the woody element creeps over to that, but then you've got some of the yeasty elements coming out of the beer too, so you can get a nice light, airy, kind of yeasty bready component there on the back third of your palate. So as you come forward from the very back of your tongue, you can feel the flavours condensing slightly as you move forward. Then as you reach that middle third of your palate, it goes down quite a lot, and these flavours that I've described to you a minute ago are quite complex in this one. But yeah, it certainly works quite well, this beer, absolutely. It really gives you that sort of Russian Imperial Stout edge to it, just the toastiness that it has, and that certainly works in the beer's favour in my opinion. I like an Imperial Stout just to have a wee bit of a roasty edge to it for sure. But yeah, back corners of the palate then, let's look at the hoppy side of the beer. There's definitely a wee touch of earthiness to this one. As you move further forward, it gets a little bit herbal, but not too much. But as you move towards the kind of front corners of the palate, the smoothness, it smoothens out a little bit, and then you get a wee touch of floral aromaticity as well. Then round the front curve of the tongue, the beer is distinctly lighter and more grassy. As I've said, this is a barrel aged beer. I've had the bottle for a couple of months now, so the hoppy character is going to drop out of this one quite a wee bit. So yeah, it's a blend as well, that's the other thing, so we don't know how old the two other beers with this one are. So yeah, but the hoppy component, there is a little remnant of the kind of green side of the beer. But let's focus on the fruity side of things then, the front third of your palate. This one, the fruity notes in this are actually a little touch sharp, which is quite nice and interesting. But yeah, border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you've got a little bit of a sort of you do have a wee bit of a kind of chocolate brownie thing again, quite a charred chocolate brownie. That sits at the very back of your front third of your palate, and then the base of that front third of your tongue, it's a nice kind of well-fired bread crusty element there, but it does have a wee element of the kind of smooth, more oatmealy type note. But on the fruity side of things, at the back you get a sharp raisin sitting on top, some juicy plum underneath, and as you move further forward, there's a wee bit of a figgy element there, but it becomes a bit more black curranty as you move into the front half of that front third of your tongue, and there is quite a wee bit of a sharp blackberry type note coming off this beer. So the fruity side of this beer for me is actually quite sharp. It's quite sharp, but it does have an element of juiciness that comes out a wee bit more the further you go into the aftertaste. But it feels quite tart, so perhaps there's been a teeny wee touch of oxidation to this beer or something, but I don't know. But as we say, these are very, very small scale brewed beers, so you always have to kind of think about that a little bit. So pardon me, yeah, the carbonation in this one as well, as I say, gives it a little bit of a bubbliness, and I just wonder, you know, has a wee bit of oxygen creeped in under the lid or whatever. But regardless, it's a really, really nice beer in that sense. It's got a lot of things going on with it. I can feel the alcohol going to my head with this one a little bit, but as we say, it's only 12%. So yeah, it's not the heaviest one I've had in recent times either from the Imperial Stout category, but it's a very well executed beer, and if they can do beers like this, you know, this is definitely a brewery to check out. It's just wee issues with conditioning that we can see. So on this note, let's round off the review with the mouthfeel then. So for me, this beer is like, you know, top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. It's kind of in that range. Like I said, there's a bit of an issue with the conditioning here. The beer is just over carbonated, and that's due to bottle conditioning. So hopefully this is something that they can kind of sort out a wee bit going forward. But overall, it's quite it feels like quite a slick stout in a lot of ways. If there wasn't that issue with the carbonation, I think this beer would be quite slick. And that's the thing to remember with barrel-aged imperial stouts, is you sacrifice a bit of the thickness of the mouthfeel to get all these infused flavours with barrel aging. So quite often what a lot of breweries will do is, you know, brew the beer to be thicker with a bit more oat or a little bit more of something else before they barrel age it. But if this beer is a blend of two different beers, I don't think they would be able to kind of make that you know, have that foresight, if you like. So that's worth remembering. So for me, this is one of the lighter imperial stouts that I've had from the Nordic countries. But, you know, compared to other places, Nordic imperial stouts are very, very thick. So bear that in mind. But yeah, in terms of the malty and barrel aging backbone of this, it's a very smooth backbone that you get out of this one. But as I say, this beer has a little bit of a roasty, toasty edge to it, but it develops further into the aftertaste to give you a wee bit of sweetness and a wee bit of dryness from the chocolate as well. You do have a wee bit of that dry, bitter chocolate coming out of this one. There's a few cakey elements in there as well, which come across as being a little bit drier, but the malty, the sweeter side of the beer, it's got a lovely woodiness to it. You get a bit of the kind of spirity brown sugars in there. As I say, a wee bit of bourbon, maybe a little bit of Scotch whisky, potentially a little touch of rum, hard to say. Maybe a white rum would be another thing to think about. But yeah, you know, slightly bitter chocolate and then some brown sugary elements. The fruity side of the beer for me has a little bit of sharpness to it and a little bit of juiciness. And then the hoppy side of the beer, there's a few remnants of the kind of green component of the beer coming out too. So yeah, in terms of IBUs, I'd guess maybe this one kind of sits around the sort of 60 or 70 mark. Actually, it does have a good little bit of a roasty, toasty edge to it. Like I say, it could potentially even be more than that. 70, I think, would be 70 seems a bit, you know, seems kind of accurate for this, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's more than that. Remember, IBUs are my weakest point of beer reviewing. But I think at this point we can round off the review there. This has been a really interesting one to review, and it's been interesting to see the other end of the spectrum from Panimoyhtiö Tuju as well. So yeah, bit of a longer review, but there's quite a bit of food for thought with this particular beer. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Panimoyhtiö Tuju as well. We will no doubt return to these guys in Riku box number 3, I would think, because I've enjoyed the beers from these guys so far. But yeah, this one was very, very interesting, like a proper old school barrel-aged Russian Imperial Stout. I think that's a good way to sum this beer up. So yeah, this one was the, how do we say it? Was it the Musta Leski, a 12% barrel-aged Imperial Stout, a blend of two different Imperial Stouts apparently from Panimoyhtiö Tuju in Lappeenranta in South Karelia over in Finland. Thank you again to Riku for making this review possible, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Slanja, skull, cheers, keepis, and kitos.